It's great to be here with you, Brian. We haven't actually had the chance to meet in person. We've got to know each other a little bit on LinkedIn, and I was just fascinated by your MSP experience, and I wanted to chat with you about it. And graciously, you accepted. So, introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you got into the MSP space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Brian Hoppe. I'm an MSP executive coach, and I've been in the MSP world since, well, for the last 20 years. I kind of started back in 2003 as a technician with one other person. We kind of started growing a company in short order, sold it to a family office and grew that company, grew that MSP inside of a family office here in Central Texas. And, yeah, I would say kind of learned the ropes of, of managed services, but first by being a technician. And then, kind of grew up in the era of when most companies were switching from break fix model to managed services model, and kind of learning through that, through that transition, moved from technician to kind of manager to director of operations, to eventually CFO, eventually CEO. So just kind of grew up in the MSP world over a number of years, and later left that initial company, bought a couple of companies, integrated them, and then in just about a year and a half ago sold my company to private equity. And so I worked with the buyer for a little over a year, and transitioned out of that recently. And so now I'm really focused on helping other MSPs do the same thing that I did, as much as they'd like to. So that's kind of the quick and dirty story. Yeah,
I want to get back to the you said family office, which we'll
yeah.
get back to. But first, do you think MSPs like their ultimate goal is to essentially be acquired or sell or like some type of acquisition merger event?
I think that most of them get there eventually. It really depends on where you start, right? Most MSPs, I would say, start with, "Hey, I've got a skill," and either they're working with somebody and they maybe have a little bit of a falling out, and then they're like, "Well, I can go do this on my own." And so they're a really good technician, and then they pick up one or two clients, and it's like, okay, suddenly I have a business. Now what do I do? And then they're either really good tech or they're pretty good at sales, and or a combination of both. And sometimes it's accidental, and other times it's purposeful. And so it kind of depends on where you start. Um, I think eventually most people get to that point where it's like, yeah, I know that I built something really interesting, that provides a good income, and maybe they start to feel stuck in it, or like, hey, I've been in this spot for a really long time, and I don't know how to move from where I'm at to the next level. And or you just get to a certain age and say, hey, eventually I've got to stop doing this. So what's next, right? And then that selling becomes kind of a something that they start thinking about. And so yeah, I mean, people start in a lot of different places, but you do it long enough, you end up you end up thinking about, okay, what's the end game, and how do I eventually get out of this, in one
Yeah,
way or another. So,
and that doesn't mean you have to actually pull the trigger on whatever that
mm,
end game is, if it's a merger or acquisition. But to be prepared if that were to happen is going
yeah.
to just make your business better in general.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's what I always encourage people that I work with is, hey, you may not want to sell in the next 5 or 10 years, but have it ready to sell, regardless, because if it is ready to sell, it's going to be running better. It's going to be returning more profit to you, and then it's going to also be more valuable whenever you do get to that point. And eventually, you'll get to that point in one way or another. And yeah, some people choose not to sell. Some people pass it on to their family. Some people do it in an ESOP, an employee ownership type of program. There's a host of different ways to do it, but yeah, being ready at any time is always very important, I think.
For sure. So you said family office, and it just made me think of some wealthy family with a lot of heirs or something that needed help with technology. Is that what you meant, or was it something else?
No, I mean, basically, a family, yeah, family office is kind of a term that's used generally for, yeah, wealthy families that run some kind of an office that, generally owns some companies and or just manages the investments of that family, of that wealthy family. So yeah, that's you kind of you pretty much got it right.
But and that's really interesting. Like that is it, when that was your first MSP like foray into
hmm
the MSP world. So you
hmm
was that basically your sole client or became your sole client?
No, it was our ownership. It was our ownership.
Oh,
So we had several. We were very small, like two or three people, when we got acquired by the family office, and so we were owned by the family office while we grew that MSP.
gotcha. What are some of the unique needs for like a family versus a group of businesses? Like I understand there's businesses involved, but there's also like people and like, hey, my granddaughter it's like got hacked or whatever. Like, can you what do you do in those cases?
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of that, but for the most part, I mean, for the most part, it's run like it's just run like an MSP. I mean, it's a business and it's meant to serve business purposes. I mean, occasionally, the owner will be like, "Hey, I need help right now," and of course, you go and help that owner, or "Hey, my son or my nephew or this other business that I own needs help. So that becomes the most urgent or important thing. But for the most part, no, I'd say it's run like any other MSP. I mean, you're trying to grow the business, you're trying to get outside clients, you're working on profitability and EBITDA and all the other metrics that a normal MSP would. It's just the ownership is a little bit different.
That yeah, that's really cool. That's an
Yeah.
interesting place to start. I don't think I've ever heard that before. So yeah, it was very
Yeah.
interesting. So I wanted to go into you kind of have like an ebook available on your LinkedIn profile. That's the
Yeah.
5 secrets to success for MSPs and leadership. and just briefly, I come from my family runs an electrical contracting business,
hmm
and my father is the owner, operator, electrical genius, business person, and he suffers from exactly what you point out in these handful of pages about working in the business instead of on the business. And like
Sure.
you have the mindset of you need to remove yourself from the situation and have it run without you,
hmm
so that it can run without you. So you've really laid out some steps and like 5 key ingredients to get
hmm
you there. And so let's just talk about it. Like, how did this come about? Like, I assume this is from your learnings as an MSP. Why did these 5 things stand out to you?
That's a great question. I think where I first started learning about it was I read a book called The E Myth a long, long time ago, and I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. But but it talks a lot about that working on the business instead of in the business, and kind of mapping out what what the ultimate structure of the business looks like. So if even if it's just three people, okay, so once we grow, what does the org chart look like? What are all the seats that are available? And then saying, okay, maybe I sit in, 8 of these 15 seats currently as the owner, but how do I start to move myself out of those seats so that instead of just working in the business, I can actually run the business, right? So that's kind of I think that's probably where it started initially. Um, and then, as practically running the business as the CEO, my mindset shifted over time to okay, I have to make this into something that is not a job for me, but an asset for me, right?
Yes.
And there was a shift that happened sometime in there, thinking about okay, so I can I own an asset. This asset is a managed services business. What is beneficial to me about owning this asset instead of owning whatever other asset there may be? It might be real estate, it might be Google stock, it might be Apple stock, whatever. Why would I own this instead of owning that? And so when you make a mindset shift from okay, I have a really good job and I get to set my own hours, or whatever the case may be, to I own an asset that I have to steward as the CEO, as the owner. There's a mindset shift that happens there, and you start to think a little bit differently about your business. And so that's kind of like what I think kicked off some of that thinking. Is okay, if this asset that I own um, pays me a salary and then loses 5% a year, how good of an investor am I? Probably not very good, right? Okay, so I need to think about, okay, so if I own this asset and I'm taking all of this risk and I've got all of this headache, I've got employees and I've got clients and people are calling me at all hours of the night. What am I doing? Am I willing to do that for X dollars, or would I be better off just selling this and buying some stock and getting a job somewhere where I don't have to worry about all that stuff, right? Um, once you make that shift, you start to think about things a little bit differently. Um, yeah. And I don't know. Do you want to kind of dive into some of the different things that I talk about in the ebook?
Yeah, sure. And you pointed out like some other things like do physical acts, like call yourself, like your title is CEO instead of president or owner, because that is a physical manifestation of what you want to be. And that's
Hmm.
going to cause you to act a certain way. So I thought that was really important to call out.
Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely. So I think and what I'll say to that is I think that a lot of MSP owners, as they're growing their company, it becomes kind of like their baby, and they feel very important when people have to come to them for answers. Um, I made it my goal to be as irrelevant to the day to day operations of the business as possible, and I wanted nobody to come to me with questions other than my very senior leadership team, because I didn't want to be a bottleneck. I didn't want to have to be required on an hourly basis to keep things running, to keep all the balls in the air and all that kind of a thing. So I think yes, I think that's a very important. It is a mindset shift, right? So if you're used to okay, I'm the smartest person. I'm the best technician. I'm the best salesperson. I'm the best everything in the business. Um, you start to feel that starts to become part of your identity, and you start to feel like, oh my gosh, what if I was not the best technician or the best salesperson, or the one that everybody came to all the time for all their questions. Well, a really good CEO is, they're not good. If you think about whatever a Fortune 500 CEO, guess what? They're mostly inaccessible to customers and and employees and all that kind of a thing, because they've got a huge game plan and they have to be super focused on executing that game plan in order to get the business strategically where it needs to go. And so when we start to shift as MSP owners into that CEO mindset, that doesn't mean like, okay, I'm gonna, cut myself off from my employees and my customers and all that kind of a thing. It just means that I'm making a mindset shift to, okay, I'm the CEO of this company. I'm not the salesperson. I'm not the technician. I'm not the service manager. I'm not the account manager. I'm not the VCIO. I'm strategically running this company. So yeah, I think it's a big thing to make that mindset shift for sure. Like kind of like you said. I mean, yeah, it's huge.
well, you said it. I was just
Yeah.
I was
Well,
just
like yes,
commenting on it.
there you go. Yeah, like as you commented on. Yes. So
And that
yeah.
kind of leads into like your kind of number two in your ebook, which is like delegate and elevate. So that's
Hmm.
like I'm not the best salesperson, or maybe I am, but someone else could
Hmm.
also be. And how do I get that to happen? Like a lot of people, they want to be that go to person, like you were saying, but the true end goal is to not be.
Hmm.
Like whether you are the best or not, like that's not your position. Like you have a different job. CEO is a different job than operations manager or
Hmm.
sales manager or sales executive or whatever it
Hmm.
happens to be.
Yep, absolutely. Or, marketing manager, or or whatever else may be. Yeah, so I think, delegate and elevate is actually a tool from the EOS toolbox, if you're familiar with that. So entrepreneurial
Operating
operating system,
system.
contraction
Yeah.
system. And that's I mean, it's a super powerful tool because it helps you really think through, okay, what are the things that I am truly the best in the world at and the greatest at, and that provide the most value to the company, and what are the things that are just not that, like what are, like, so what's my highest and best use as a CEO, and what is everything else that just needs to be delegated to other people. So generally speaking, as a CEO of the company, I mean, you're going to be, you're going to be focused on, okay, so solving the biggest problems that exist. You might be focused on strategy, vision, uh, uh, perhaps some like very high level sales. If you get pulled into some of those things, mergers and acquisitions, the big, high level stuff, and the other stuff tends to be a distraction. Um, for me, my company wasn't huge, so I filled multiple seats, and so what I would do is I would sit down and I would go, okay, like let's look at all of the different seats that I have. So I'm kind of like I'm the CEO. Yes, I'm also maybe the director of sales and marketing. I'm also maybe the CFO because I don't have a financial executive. So looking at all of those different roles and saying, okay, what are the things inside of those roles that I do? So that might be create the marketing plan. It might be do do sales webinars, go to conferences, do sales calls, um, calculate sales commissions for people. So I'm going to list out all of those things under each of those roles, and I'm going to say, okay, what are the things that I love and that I'm great at? What are the things that I like? Yeah. So it's love and like or don't like, right? And then there's things that I'm great at, that I'm good at, and that I'm not good at. And so put those things into buckets. And by when you do that analysis and say, okay, here are the things that I don't like and I'm not good at. I should never do those things ever again. Like, I should never touch them.
Yeah, they're
I should find
first on the
somebody.
chopping block.
Absolutely. And whatever those things are, and generally CEOs look at those things and they say, oh my gosh, those are terrible. I would never wish that I'm my worst enemy to do that thing, so I have to do it. It's like, no, whatever thing that you hate, there is somebody that absolutely loves doing it. And all you got to do is find that person that loves it and they're great at it. And they're going to take that thing and do it 1,000 times better than you ever did it. And it's going to be awesome because you delegated it to somebody else. And I think we have a lot of trouble as, when we're growing into that CEO role, saying, okay, I can truly delegate that thing. And there's a lot of steps to become a successful delegator. That's another conversation. But getting those things off your plate so that you can actually work into your highest and best use or your zone of genius. There's different terms for it, but it's like the stuff that you love and you're great at, because that's what's going to take your company to the next level instead of kind of leaving it where it's at.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's
yeah.
like you're essentially like doing a workshop with yourself. This delegate and elevate step of your
Hmm. Hmm.
ebook, and you're writing essentially a job description for the next step, which was
Hmm.
build a leadership team. And
Hmm.
talk to me about like some of the key roles that you've identified through your years of experience in the MSP land.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so generally speaking, and again, it's going to depend on the size of your MSP, and how you have things set up and all that kind of thing. So, generally speaking, and again, I use the EOS model. So kind of how that boils down is you would have a visionary, you'd have an integrator, and then you'd have functional leaders. So generally speaking, those functional leaders would be a sales leader, an ops leader, and a finance leader. So a classic leadership team might be 5 people, and or the CEO might handle both the visionary and the integrator role. Depending on your size, it generally takes a sizable company to be able to afford executives at all those levels, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of times you have one person filling two seats, which is okay. As you grow, that's that's happens all the time. But yeah, at the end of the day, yes, you've got to build a leadership team to grow successfully and to scale. And so that was my focus as an owner was, okay, how do I find those people that are going to fill those seats, and that I can successfully delegate a lot of those things to that they're much better at than I am. So yeah, sales leader, operations leader, finance leader. Those are generally speaking the people that you're going to need in place, and that doesn't mean you don't help out a lot. You don't provide direction or vision, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you should be meeting on a weekly basis with those people, 90 minutes, talking through, okay, here's where we're at. Here's our rocks, our big goals for the quarter. How are we doing on those? I mean, the kind of the weekly meeting cadence. But yeah, I mean, those positions I feel like are such a key as you grow your company. And the more talent you can get in those places, and the more you can let go of stuff as a CEO to those people, the better your company is going to run. So
Yeah, that
I
was a good point
yeah
you made. Like a good observation is like, oh, this thing that I hate to do. Like I don't want anyone to have to do this, but somebody does eventually have to do it. And the
yeah
truth is, somebody loves doing it, just like you said. Like
yes
just because your personality or whatever your traits just make you abhor this specific task or project or whatever, doesn't mean there's not someone that loves it.
absolutely 100%.
And
So
so the
yeah.
next thing you mentioned in your ebook is focus on value creation. This is the first time you mention a very important acronym, EBITDA, or however you
Hmm.
pronounce it, EBITDA,
Yep.
EBITDA,
Yeah.
EBITDA. I've heard it a few different ways, but I think, and this is like when I mentioned my dad's company, this is like where he suffers. Like, tell me your numbers. What is the most profitable segment of your business?
Hmm.
And he's like in the phase of his life where he's looking for retirement type of questions. And, if you're going to sell a business, these numbers need to be at the ready, to deliver to a potential buyer, investor, or whatever the circumstances are. So tell me about
Hmm.
like how you arrived on that, kind of being as one of the core pieces of MSP business.
Yeah. I mean, I was involved in peer groups for a long time. Then and they were eventually became ConnectWise peer groups. One of the things that we did inside those was benchmarking through service leadership, which is also now a part of ConnectWise. Lots of acquisitions happened, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where where that comes in because at the end of the day, you're looking at profitability, right? I mean, bottom line, what are we shooting for? At the end of the day, there's a bottom line, and your goal as a CEO may be to maximize that. It may not be your goal, but if you're looking to create value, and if you're looking to ultimately sell your company, then that number EBITDA that's what's going to be looked at. So, at the end of the day, if you sell to private equity, if you sell to, another MSP that's, down the road, whatever, at the end of the day, that's what they're going to look at. And those who have strong EBITDA can, when you look at enterprise value, a 5% EBITDA versus a 20% EBITDA, the dollars and cents at the end of the day, it's a huge difference. No matter what size you are, and the larger the company and the larger the EBITDA, the more value there is. But a small percentage versus a large percentage makes multiples of difference when you go to sell. And so, yeah, so that becomes a very, very important metric as you're, not only as you're running it, because that's makes up a good portion of what you actually get to take home if you're the owner, but also
Right.
when you go to sell. I mean, it's a huge thing. So.
Yeah, and it really ties back into like the CEO mindset. Like who is your boss? Like as a CEO, and like this EBITDA number may be a good boss to have. Like on the day to day, like you can track it. You can reflect on it to see if it is a what is the trend. But getting into more like who is your boss as a CEO, and you mentioned this briefly. Your last kind of tenet is to find your success partners, which is kind of like a peer group, kind of like you mentioned. So tell me more
Mhm.
about that. And I actually recommend the same thing to other MSPs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think that every MSP owner should be in a peer group. They should have a coach, and they should have a mentor, and those three things, and those are all different, completely different things. So yeah, so peer groups, I feel like were probably one of the biggest growth things for me as I progressed in my career, because you just learn so much. You get exposed to so much that's outside of your bubble. Because you're so heads down, you're focused on running your MSP. You don't a lot of times stop to look up and see what's going on around you. Being in a peer group kind of forces that. It says, okay, I'm going to take a couple of days, a quarter, and get out of the weeds and look at what's going on in the industry, what's going on around me. I'm going to engage with peers. I'm going to engage with potential vendors. I'm going to engage with experts that whether they be sales or finance or security experts, whatever. Just get out of the weeds and say, okay, here's what all is going on. And then the second thing for me was a coach. Was like, hey, and coaches. I'll say this is that a lot of people kind of misconstrue what that means. There are a lot of people that call themselves coaches that I would consider to be consultants. So if you think about somebody who's like a business process person and they call themselves a coach, well, actually, it's like they're a consultant. They're saying like, hey, you should implement this process or you should implement this framework or whatever. A coach is somebody who's really working with you on an ongoing basis on you as a leader, on your leadership, on your work-life balance, on your strategy, perhaps, on saying, okay, here, I'm dealing with these issues and helping you figure out what do you need to do to be more efficient? What do you need to do to be a better leader? What do you need to do to be more self-aware? All of those kind of things, and helping you work through those things, and less of, hey, here's my process. I'm going to teach you how to do it so that you can go implement it. So I had a coach like that, and I think the number one thing that he was good at was just asking really good questions, and saying, "Hey, I mean, not telling me what to do, but asking me really good questions that helped me find what was already inside me and become a better leader because of that." So that's another thing. There's a lot of other success partners out there. I mean, good accountants, good CPAs, good attorneys. There's a lot of other people that can help you along your journey. But those two in particular, I feel like are like you can they're easy to find, and B, probably provide a lot of impact for MSPs that choose to engage with them.
Yeah, so you've got peer groups, consultants, and coaches, which are three distinct
Mhm.
areas. So you, Brian, are actually an MSP coach. So tell me just real quickly, like what's your elevator pitch? Why should someone pick you as their MSP coach?
It's a great question. I think that I'm different from almost everybody in the industry, because, like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of people who call themselves coaches, which they definitely coach in a way. Um, my coaching is focused on you as a leader. My coaching is focused on looking at where you're at, We'll do assessments. We'll look at a lot of different things. Say, okay, where are you at, and how do I best help you get to where you want to be? Hold you accountable to what you say that you want to do. Help you set goals. Help you develop your leadership. Help you develop your leaders inside your company. Figure out. Help you get to the root cause of issues that you're having. Help you figure out exactly why you're stuck where you've been stuck for a long time. And routinely when I talk to my clients, they're like, "Man, I've just never thought about this issue in this way." And it's not because I told them something; it's because I asked them questions about where they're
Right. You're
at.
not prescriptive.
And
You're like, you
I'm not.
already
I'm
know
not.
this answer. I'm just going to pull it out of you. I'm going to make you say it out loud.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and it's not, and I'm not grilling you. I'm just hopefully holding up a mirror and saying, and showing you what's reality, just based on questions that I ask that are, that kind of get to the root cause of issues that you may be having or places that you're stuck. So yeah, I think it's very different than what most people experience in coaching, and it's hard to find as well. I think, especially in the MSP space, there are not many people who coach like I do, and yeah, they're few and far between, and difficult to find. So. There's a lot of strategic coaches. There's a lot of operational coaches. There's a lot of sales coaches that focus on very specific areas of your business or process things, and they're great. I mean, they're fantastic. I just take a very different approach than most people do.
And you would describe yourself as a leadership coach, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say an executive coach, because I'm
Yeah.
because I'm not coaching necessarily their leadership. I'm coaching the person. I'm not coaching an
Gotcha.
issue in their business. I'm coaching you as an individual. So, I mean, I think of it a lot as kind of like a sports coach in a way, in that it's like that coach is there to improve their game, take them to the next level. I mean, and even the best performers in the world, they've all got coaches, right? I mean, no, there's no tennis player, golf player, baseball, football. Everybody's got a coach, and that person is there to help them see things they can't see, to look at their swing and say, hey, what are you thinking when you're doing this? Is that what you want to happen, or do you want this to happen instead? And maybe there's a way to tweak things to make it a little bit better, right? I mean, that's kind of what I liken it to in a way. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an example of asking one of those like mirror questions.
Yep.
What are you
Yeah.
expecting to happen here?
Yep.
Well, that's really
So
cool.
you've
So
been doing
you
this way for a really long time. What would happen if you changed the way that you did that? Do you think things would end up different? I don't know. I mean, yeah, worth looking at,
it's
right?
like
Worth
yes.
reflecting on.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
So you have like a ton of experience in the MSP space. You've sold several MSPs. You've been a CFO, you've been a technician, you've been an owner. So let's talk about the MSP industry for a minute, and just
Okay.
maybe if you can pontificate on what you think is most important for MSPs right now. It may be like sales marketing, it may be like leveling up. Like we've always seen a lot of consolidation in the MSP space. So like maybe that's something important, or it could be like cybersecurity or anything you see like that's really important to be focusing on.
Yeah. What I'll say about, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we could talk about as relates to that, but yeah, I see the M&A trend continuing to increase. I think that there continue to be more and more funds and private equity and all that coming into the space, and so kind of like everybody's trying to find a platform, right? And then they're trying to find MSPs to acquire, to bolt on to that platform, and I think that's just going to continue on over time. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. And then from there, at the end of the day, Yes, obviously everybody's talking about cybersecurity, and a lot of people want to transition from being an MSP to an MSSP, right? I mean, that's a big trend. Um, and so people have to decide, owners have to decide, hey, what business do I want to be in? Do I want to be do I want to be an MSP? Do I want to be an MSSP? Do I want to focus on a particular vertical? What do I, what's my strategy? And I think an important thing for MSPs to think about is, okay, what's my differentiator? And I think that when you ask people that question, when you ask owners that question, most people cannot articulate what makes them different from the guy down the street. Um, for me, I really focused on so a couple of things. One is that we focused on a very specific industry, and that was banking and credit unions. So financial services industry, and it was like I'm laser focused on serving these clients because I don't want to be like I'm just serving everyone. It's like this is what makes me different from every other MSP down the street. And then number two, and as an offshoot of that, was compliance, because I mean, it's
Huge in financial,
arguably,
especially.
yeah, yes, arguably one of the most, the most regulated industry that there is, and so, and there were a lot of benefits to that because I'm sure there are a lot of MSPs out there that are like, man, I just can't get my clients to upgrade from Windows Server 2012 or whatever. Well, guess what? If you're a bank and you don't upgrade from Windows Server 2012, they're going to shut you down, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
you're out of
so you got to do
business.
it. But yeah, but then in addition to that, we got into a lot of a lot of the cybersecurity stuff that people are getting into now. We had to be into a long time ago because those things were already being enforced in the banking industry. So all that to say, like I think figuring out, okay, what is it that truly makes me unique, and it can't be, well, my team is awesome, or we're really good at customer service, or that kind of thing. Like what is like the real unique thing about my MSP that sets me apart from everybody else? And thinking through that and really understanding that and really having that be a true differentiator, I think is going to be a big thing for a lot of MSPs
What
in the
would be an
future.
example of a good differentiator statement, like one that you've heard or one that you could just make up?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like we're the I'll making something up. We're the premier provider of IT services and security to accounting firms in the state of Oklahoma. Like
Hmm.
we're number one. We Nobody does accounting firms in Oklahoma better than we do, and so that's what we're focused on. That's where we grow. Those are the people that we service, and nobody can do it better than we can. It's like, I mean, and going back to like good to great, like what can you be the best in the world at, and you can find a niche. It's just that most MSPs have grown in such a way that makes it really really difficult for them to do that, to
Yeah, they
find
have to
that
like
niche and to say
fire certain
and to
customers
specialize.
just to meet their niche goals.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But if
So
you're thinking
I'm not
about
saying
that
that
from the
it's easy.
outset,
Yeah,
yeah, if you're thinking about that
yeah,
from the outset, you're more likely to get there and have that
absolutely.
differentiator.
Yes. And
Yeah,
again,
I
like
have.
that also is going to make you more valuable when you go to sell. I mean, that's going to be an increase in value as you go to sell. So something else to think about.
Yeah, so like the acquire would be like, we want to buy accounting firms in West Texas, and MSP
Mhm.
services for. And be like, well, that's Brian over there. It's like,
There you go.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just made that up. That wasn't me, but that's what I made up. And going back to kind of like the trends, at the end of the day, I think there's been a lot of transition over the years and in the managed services world, right? So like when the cloud started becoming a thing, it was like, oh my gosh, the cloud's, like all these big companies are going to come and steal all of our clients, or like security or whatever. Like, but at the end of the day, like MSPs own the last mile to the customers, and I won't say every, but most every company that's tried to skirt around MSPs and go straight to small businesses has been unsuccessful. It's like you've got to go through the MSP. So owning the relationship, and being the trusted advisor is ultimately like that's the thing, and that's what makes MSPs amazing is that they could be so close to the customer, and all of these big companies need you as an MSP in order for them to be successful and for them to get into your customer base. So continue owning that relationship, and I think that's going to be a thing for the long haul. In even however many companies that there are that are doing roll ups, and they're you've got these mega MSPs and all that. They're the bigger that they get, the harder a time they're going to have retaining that last mile. And so it's generally speaking the smaller MSPs that are going to continue to own that, and I think that's going to continue. That's going to be a trend that's going to keep going over the years. So
That is really interesting. I've never heard anyone put it so succinctly that the MSP is the last mile provider. And that's, and that, kind of makes me think of, like Amazon, for example, like they struggle with that last mile of deliveries. But MSPs are already sitting there waiting to be that last mile deliverer of IT services to businesses around the globe. So yeah, that's a really cool way to put it.
absolutely, yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, that's going to be a clip, Brian.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that was really cool. So tell us where we can find you on the internet.
Oh, absolutely. So, brianhoppe.com, hard to spell, easy to say, BrianHoppe.com. That's my website. Very active on LinkedIn. And I'd love doing, podcasts and stuff like this. So you can probably find me around the MSP space doing stuff like this, because I really enjoy talking MSP stuff. So
Don't we all? Well, thank you, Brian. I
yeah,
appreciate you joining me.
absolutely. Thanks, Mikey, and have a good one.